Hey guys. So if you have a question or something, just ask it. I don't really have like a script or anything that I plan on talking about. There's like just too much to try and cover the whole India journey and KS and and the diet. So and I'm not gonna take requests to be in the video right now. Maybe later or another time. But I just kind of want to see if people will type questions in and I'll just answer them and I'll just go down the list. I think that's probably the best way to do it for now. No problem. I really like when something works like this and you know how difficult it was to find and how long you had to suffer and how hopeless you were, and you just have this instinct to want to help other people. I've been fistula free since March of 2018. That's when I got back. March of 2018. So, a little over 2 years. Sorry, that horn is the fire station around here. So yeah, March of 2018. And still totally fistula free. No collection, no drainage, no concern. It was a J shape or L shape, according to Bapat. I actually had to have 2 threads at the same time because of the shape of it. He had to artificially create a second perforation through my skin to do a second thread based on the shape of it. And then he considered that to be moderately complex. It wasn't as simple as all, but it wasn't like a super, super complex one either. Treatment, I was in India for 45 days, and that was 6 threads. And then part of being here, when you come back, is months of healing the wound. So it takes a while. It's not a quick thing. And it's it's a lifestyle adjustment. It's a lifestyle change. You're not just you're a part of the process. So I had surgeries on it prior that failed. It had been 10 years since the attempted fistulotomy. Bapat did not do. He did not do any kind of surgery aside from the creation of a second hole in order to do 2 threads at once. And at the very end of my treatment, like the last day before I left, when he did his once over kind of inspection and everything, he did notice a small superficial adjacent tract that wasn't addressed, and he, using a scalpel, cut a tiny little piece out. But that was all done with local anesthetic. There was no surgery or like some of the doctors do an actual fistulotomy combined with the threading. Mine wasn't like that. How many months after KS? I came home in March of 2018. So it's been a while. 2.5 years. Doesn't feel like that long. And you guys can just keep firing stuff off. Hi guys who just joined in. No, so I mean, well, I don't that's a good question. No, I have no fistula related symptoms whatsoever. There's no collection, there's no drainage. It's not a tunnel. Well, was it 2018? That was January 2018. So, or January 17th, 2000. January 27th, 2019 to March 2019. So it's been a year and a half. I don't have any symptoms anymore. So there's no drainage, there's no collection. It's not a canal that's left. So there's nothing to fill with infection. It's like a ridge that's created at the end. It's opened, so there's nothing there, and that just heals over as skin. So there's nothing is 100%. There's nothing 100% in the world of medicine, but it's not all up to the doctor either. You need to be involved in the process. You need to do what he says. You need to modify your lifestyle. And I still, to this day, have Crohn's symptoms. I have diarrhea sometimes. I have cramping sometimes. And I've had to make sure that I take my diet very seriously so that I keep my Crohn's symptoms under control so that I don't have recurrence. Because if you just continue to treat your body like crap and think that, you could do whatever you want, it's not going to hold up. But Bapat's work has held up, and despite me not having my Crohn's figured out immediately upon going to him or even upon getting back, it took a while before I met the nutritionist who actually taught me how to get off medication and taught me how to control my symptoms, my Crohn's symptoms. His work held up through all of that. So no, it's nothing is 100%, but it's much, from what I've read and from the information that I've gathered through the group in Facebook and through the information I've gathered through there talking to him about his patients, an overwhelming majority of folks fare much better from this treatment than they do from the Western surgeries, which you have almost no chance of actually healing from. And it makes no sense that those Western surgeries would work. You come in with a chronic issue that took a long time to develop, and they just, do an exam under anesthesia, throw you on an operating table, put a plastic thread in there that's supposed to last there forever, either Ceton, or they just cut it and hope, and then tell you, oh, go home, eat whatever you want, do whatever you want, and, let's see what happens. They don't address the source of the infection on the inside of your body that continues to allow infection to bleed into the wall of your butt cheek. So how would it heal? This is progressive. It's progressive. It's a slow and steady way of giving your body the ability to do what it's designed to do, which is to heal. But you have to be involved. You have to surrender to the process. You have to modify your diet. You have to modify your lifestyle. You have to put your health first. You got to get rid of the Western idea that it's going to be this quick thing, because it's just not. Hi guys who've joined since. Feel free to fire away. Any questions about the Karsutra experience? Any questions about the diet that I'm on now? Sure, I have no problem with talking about the cost. So, and I wouldn't let this discourage you, because I know costs scare people, and that's a huge part of this. I felt really grateful that I had the resources to make this happen. But I know a lot of people, that's a huge issue for them, not knowing, number one, if they can afford it, not knowing if they can get off work. Luckily, I was able to do those things. The treatment itself with Dr. Bapat cost about $6,500, which when you think about, 7 weeks of treatment with him, plus him following up with you every week for months after and actually working, it's a lot of money, but you're paying for real long-term treatment. And then you've got the cost of the flights. You've got the cost of where you decide to stay in India. So it can really add up. There are people who there are state facilities in India that do Karsutra for much cheaper. There are tons of different options of where you can stay in India, whether you do a cheap Airbnb or you stay in a really nice Western hotel, which is what I did because I wanted to be really comfortable. I mean, it can range. So, but I would say, you know, if you're really going and investing in the whole process, this process is probably going to cost you between you know, the doctor, the travel, and the hotel and the flights and all that, somewhere between 10 to 15,000, probably, realistically. It's expensive. That's one of the reasons why this is so messed up, that you have to go through all of this to do it. You know, you can't use your medical insurance in your home country to get it done. It's a real shame. And hopefully that's not forever. But you know, we'll see. And I'm happy to help with as much as I can in the meantime to give you guys the tools to go. About the diet, I think the biggest things about the diet are things I try and steer clear from. It's grain-free, corn-free, dairy-free, red meat-free, lectin-free, which is a property of vegetables that causes you have to pressure cook everything so that they get soft. They don't have that rigidity. So when you see things showing up in your poop because they didn't break down, I don't have that issue because I use everything in a pressure cooker. Low sugar, low fat. I don't really drink much alcohol, very little. I end up eating a lot of chicken and rice, poultry, rice, fish, cooked vegetables. Fruit's okay, gotta be careful with seeds, but especially if you have diverticulitis. But those are the core things about the diet. The idea of the diet is to take everything that's potentially allergenistic. Oh, no soy either. So there are a lot of foods, when you get into the health food game, you'll start learning about all these allergenistic foods, you know? And the big ones that you'll see are gluten, grains, you know, dairy, red meat, you know, corn. All these things are known to give people digestive issues. So whether your Crohn's or your IBD doctor is telling you that you're allergic to these things, or you took an allergy test and you're allergic to them or not, these things are known to give people issues. You eat corn, you go to the bathroom, and it's all there because your body doesn't break it down. So that's just putting strain on your system, you know, whether you know it or not. And we already have strained systems. We have wounds in our guts. We have small areas that things need to squeeze through. So do I still get stomach aches and little cramps? Of course I do. I have Crohn's disease. I don't believe in remission, by the way. I believe in control. It's very different, and I'll get into that more. Do I have diarrhea sometimes? Of course I do. But I know what my symptoms are. I know when I go to the bathroom, or if I feel that little cramp, I know all I have to do is sit down and go to the bathroom. I'm going to be fine. I know it's not because I ate a salad and I have this wad of vegetables stuck in my gut now because I, you know, ate something that's not going to be able to get through. And now I have to suffer with this cramp all night. You know, I also know because of the timing that I eat my meals and the way I eat my meals, I know now when I'm going to go to the bathroom usually. It's usually in the morning. I usually go a couple times in the morning. So that way I'm good for the day. It's about rhythms. It's about listening to your body. It's about, there's a lot more to it than just cutting things out. You know, there's also a whole supplemental approach. And, you know, I was prescribed a very specific set of restrictions and supplements by the nutritionist who I see, who will see any of you remotely for very cheap. He does not charge a lot of money. He's an 84-year-old man who's had Crohn's disease since he was 17 years old. He has short bowel, which means they took about 17 feet of intestine out of him because he was growing up, you know, when there was, you know, a lot of, you know, barbaric, you know, ways of going about, you know, treating Crohn's and whatnot. It's still pretty barbaric if you ask me, but you know, he went through all of that, and they told him he was going to die his whole life, like they told me that they were going to make me as comfortable as they could until I got a colostomy bag, which I didn't believe was the life for me, and I proved them all wrong. He did the same thing, and he survives on this protocol to this day, having been on no medication. I shouldn't say survives, because he thrives. He's one of the most agile, intelligent, sharp, 84-year-olds I've ever met. And he's got a process that a lot of which overlapped with some of the things I learned in India too. I mean, Bapat was not for red meat. He was not for a lot of stringy vegetables. He was not about dairy. They're not as totally against dairy as he was here. There's like ghee that they like, and which is clarified butter, and also you should know a big thing about the diet is that as restrictive as it is while your gut is healing, which my gut is still healing because I've only been doing this about a year. The idea is that once you heal and you get your gut bacteria and you get your gut strength and the ulcers and stuff that Crohn's disease creates in the bowel, once that stuff starts to heal and you get stronger and more resilient, you can add stuff back. Like he just recently added sourdough bread for me, which if you're in this health food game, you know that sourdough bread is the healthiest bread that you can eat because it's a very, very simple bread. It's an ancient grain it's 3 ingredients: ancient grain, sourdough, water, and salt. That's it. If you look at other breads, they've got a laundry list of ingredients. And, so he's put me back on that. He doesn't let me know everything he's going to give me because he doesn't want to get me too excited. But when you haven't eaten bread for a year and you get sourdough bread back, so it's not like you have to just cut out everything forever. You just need to be willing to treat your body like a temple for a while until you build your strength back and you understand how things work. Keep firing them off or I'll just keep talking. Well, tested medication costs. I mean, the test that I got before I left the United States to go to India, what Bapat used to understand my fistula, they did a MRI with contrast. So they do the IV contrast, they put you in MRI, and they kind of do an image of your fistula tract. I had one of those done recently because my fistula was raging and my doctors here wanted me to do it. So I had that done already. That was covered through health insurance. So that didn't cost me anything. When I was over there, they did something that makes way more sense is they actually injected contrast dye into the tract and did an x-ray. So they got a much clearer picture of the fistula tract itself, which here in America, in addition to the MRI, which really doesn't give them a great picture, they'll tell you they want to do the exam under anesthesia. That's code for we want to get you on the operating table. That's what that is. In India, they do the injection of the contrast dye and then they do an x-ray. So they literally, and I saved the x-rays, I still have them, a perfect image of the whole thing. That was included as part of the cost of my treatment, if I remember correctly, with Bapat, which I had said was about between $6,500 and $7,000 for the entire, treatment. It didn't matter. It was an estimated 6 to 8 week treatment. Mine ended up being about 45 days, and that's what he charged me. So my biggest cost now, because I'm off biologics, I was on Remicade for 10 years. I was on Stelara, that didn't work. I was on Entyvio, that didn't work. Now, I have health insurance, luckily, so I didn't have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to be on those drugs. But I'm not on any of that now. All I'm on is I take supplements. I take a lot of different supplements, and those are expensive. I mean, they end up running me probably about $200 a month between all the supplements that I take. And just one, before I get to the question about Western doctors with the cost of the supplements, you have to remember, I cook a lot of my own food, right? I don't drink alcohol, right? So I'm not spending exorbitant amounts of money like I used to on dining out and those kind of things. So in my mind, my money goes towards me. It goes towards my health, and it's money that you're paying. But if you budget yourself, it's what's more important than that. I mean, if you can figure it out. Western doctors when I returned from home. Mixed reactions. Some amazed, like I have unfortunately I've severed, ties at this point with most of my Western doctors because I don't need them and because I don't trust them and because they didn't really do anything to help me for a long time. I mean, they tried, and there was some buying of time that I got with some medications. Sometimes these medications and these surgeries do serve a purpose, but a lot of them who had watched me suffer for a long time were shocked when I came home and had this success. I think there was some belief that maybe I just got lucky, that this was just a fluke thing that, I figured out and it was a little kooky and it actually worked for me and I got lucky. None of them had heard of Karsutra before, which I found pathetic considering it's their job to rid people of these things, and anybody who's suffered with one for long enough has done the Google research and come across it. I mean, it's out there. A little bit of disbelief. These guys have egos too, so I'm naturally somebody who, once I know something, it's hard for me to ignore it. And when I was in conversations with a lot of these white coats, I was calling them out on a lot of their bullshit. And they don't really like that. They don't like to feel as if they're not gods because they have white coats on. So I would be cautious in the way that you approach them. But anybody who's denying the failure rates of the Western approach, and not giving any credibility to the idea of diet as it relates to digestive issues is not worth your time in the Western system. If they are still in the school of thought that diet has no relationship with Crohn's whatsoever and IBD, it's not worth your time to continue to see that person. Or you need to make sure that you're also seeing somebody who is nutrition minded. And as far as KS goes, these guys are trained to believe they are the be all and end all. They are trained to believe in surgeries. They are trained to believe in drugs. So if you bring up a treatment like this, they are going to be skeptical. And I've never gone back to the surgeon who told me that he would make me as comfortable as he could until I would inevitably need a colostomy bag. I haven't gone back to that surgeon yet. And I don't know if I ever will, but I sometimes daydream about how it would be nice to go in there pretending that I was still sick and to just kind of show him my ass and say, fuck you. But I haven't done that. I think a lot of them also are just, like a couple of them who've known me for a long time, because I have a bunch of different doctors, or I had a bunch of different doctors. Now I really don't, but I did. And a couple of them I think were just relieved to see somebody do well. They're not used to, somebody turning things around. It usually just gets worse when you get to my age and you've had Crohn's for 20 some odd years and your fistulas are out of control and your biologics are failing. I think it usually just spirals out of control. So for them to watch me turn it around, I think there was also a sense of amazement too for some of them. And did you have to pay for your procedure in advance? Yes, I had to pay for my procedure in full before I went. I wired Dr. Bapat the money before I left the United States. Now, I'm not saying that he wouldn't be open to some kind of a plan. I'd have to ask him about that. But I paid in full. And I feel so bad for everybody now who can't even get there because of COVID. I was lucky enough to do this right before all that happened. I did not have an issue getting a visa. This was before COVID. I did not apply for a medical visa though. I got a normal tourist visa. And the scary part about the tourist visa, from what I remember, was that it was only for 60 days. So my concern was that if the treatment lasted longer than 60 days, what was I going to do? Because I was going to have to leave the country and then come back in. But I just figured I would cross that bridge when I came to it, and my visa ended up expiring. I ended up leaving after 45 days, so that never happened. But I applied for the visa through the India government website and got it very quickly. I think between me making the decision that I needed to go, because I didn't have time. I was abscessing. I was really, I would have gone into sepsis had I waited too long. So I was getting my documents and my passport and my visa and my hotels booked and everything. I think in the span of about 2 weeks, I got everything done. And it was stressful, but I was able to get it done. How uncomfortable was the procedure compared with the fasciotomy? I've had a couple surgeries in my life. I've had my tonsils out. I broke my humerus completely in half, and I have a scar here, and I have a 12-inch titanium rod in my arm. I had the fasciotomy. Obviously, I've been through the Karsutra. I had a bowel resection. The most pain I've ever been in my entire life was, without question, the fasciotomy surgery. No question. That was when I first got the abscess, which turned into a fistula, and they did a fasciotomy on me, which was basically them trying to scrape that infectious tract out of my ass cheek in one swoop. Waking up from that and having to go to the bathroom through that open wound and everything, there was no question that was the most pain I had ever been in. I was on a morphine drip during that. I was in the hospital for, I think, almost 2 weeks. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Compared to Karsutra is not without pain. There's pain involved. But far more manageable. The way I would compare it is almost like dental work on your ass. Because the most uncomfortable part of it is the Novocaine shot or whatever anesthetic he uses. That was the most painful part. Your ass up, legs in the harness, that area is still very tender because it's filled with infection and, pus and, it's your butthole, it's sensitive area. And then, he has to inject it with a syringe, and that hurts, and then the area goes numb, and then he does what he needs to do. It's uncomfortable. But I was there alone. Each session took about a half hour, and that's a half hour a week, okay? So, in a week's time, you got to get through like a half hour session with Bapat. So you just kind of bear down. You keep your wits about you, you hype yourself up, you get in there and you let him do what he's got to do, and before you know it, you the next thread is in and you move on to the next phase. That was it. The shots are uncomfortable, but I mean, if you've gotten a Novocaine shot in your face, you can do it. You can deal with this in your butt. How hard was it to walk after getting the threads? It wasn't in the very beginning. I kind of expected that when he first put those threads in, that everything was gonna flush out and everything. It wasn't really like that. I mean, you still have infection that is in there. So it's not really the walking that was uncomfortable. It's still like, people who have fistulas know that still sometimes sitting can be a little uncomfortable or whatever. Like, you're still gonna have those same kind of things while you're going through treatment. But walking, it wasn't painful. It's not like because what's going on is a progressive cutting and healing of the tract out. But it's so progressive that it's not like these threads are like ripping. They're not tied so tight that they're like, that they're literally ripping your skin. That's not what it is. There's a medicine on the thread that acts as like a cutting, cauterizing agent, and also the threads do their work slowly. So, I mean, the pain of the walking, it's not that bad. I mean, I would, in the beginning, it was more an energy level thing. I was so tired. I was really, really sick. So to walk, 5 kilometers, which is about 3.5 miles, when you're really just sick, when you're, is difficult. But as you go, you get stronger, and by the end of it, I was walking more than I was supposed to walk because I just wanted to get through it. I figured the more I walk, the more this thing, the walking it also allows for, your blood to run, you sweat a little bit, so, things flow and move, and, it was all very tolerable. I'd say, again, the worst pain is the shots in your butt. There's no question. That was the worst part. Thanks, Oriana. I'm glad that it helps inspire you guys. Whereas they're able to tolerate the food. So I did get food poisoning in India. And I wasn't on the diet that I am now when I was in India. Bapat did restrict certain things. I was vegan while I was there. And veganism sounds great, and I've tried, that wasn't the first time I had tried being vegan. I had done that before. But veganism and Crohn's disease, from what I've learned and what I know now, especially with me personally, are a disaster. Because eating and leaning on all those raw vegetables and all of that grain and all of those glutens is a bad idea. So as far as tolerating the food in India, you need to be very careful when you eat in India. Bottom line, you need to be ridiculously careful because water is contaminated in India. You cannot, even if you're at a nice Western hotel, where I was, you can get food poisoning just from eating a piece of fruit that was washed in their water. You need to be super careful. So I'm gonna say that I did not tolerate the food in India well because of that fact that I did have food poisoning. Having said that, though, they had Western grocery stores with packaged food items. There were some items in the hotel that I realized after, being more careful about what I was ordering, that I did tolerate and that I really did like. I also found a mall that had a Chili's. And when you are an American, I would never go to a Chili's in America is like, the equivalent of going to like a Burger King. It's like, just American garbage. But when you're in India and you haven't, eaten kind of a normal meal in a while because you've been, leaning on, I ate a lot of, peanut butter sandwiches and granola and, cereal with almond milk and French fries at the hotel and I ate very sparingly, honestly, in India. There was not, it was difficult, but at the end, I found more items and I could help somebody who was going now really make sure their pantry was stocked better. But I found a Chili's and they had vegetarian quesadillas, which were okay with Bapat. And at the end, when I found that, I ate those like almost every day for like the last 2 weeks, and it was amazing. But you have to be super, super careful. Bottled water, you need to keep your mouth closed in the shower. You brush your teeth with bottled water. because I think something like 75% of tourists get what they call Delhi belly, or food poisoning in India, and I got it, and I was sick for almost a full week, and it was not like normal diarrhea. Like I couldn't even move for that week. That was probably the lowest point in my whole life. How about setting after the procedure? Say you wanted to sit for a couple hours straight, could you? I assume you mean like sitting down, right? Like could I sit down after the procedure? Yes, I could, because the pain was no more or less after the procedure than the fistula already, and honestly, right after the procedures, the threads, it honestly felt best those days, right after the procedure, and that was because during the procedure, during the thread change, things are flushing out, you're relieving a lot of that pressure that's backed up in there. And I walked out of Bapat's office every time feeling fine. I sat in a cab and would take a 40-minute Uber ride back to my hotel from Bapat's office, straight from there, and feel fine. And then, I didn't really do much while I was in India. There are some people in the KS group on the Facebook, a lot of them talked about, traveling around India, sightseeing, stuff like that. I mean, it's not a debilitating experience for a lot of people, and it really wasn't debilitating for me either. I just chose not to do a lot of that stuff, and especially in the beginning when I was really, really tired and sick, I just kept it easy. I did what I was supposed to do. I kind of looked at it like I was in, blue-collar prison. I spent my time in my hotel room. I rested. I watched TV, I read, I went on the internet and killed time. I would eat some meals, then I would go to the gym in the hotel and I would walk for the hour, or I would do my walk around town. I eventually started walking to the mall and I would walk there, but it didn't create any more pain. Like, I was able to sit, and if anybody who has a fistula knows there's already sometimes some discomfort when you sit. This didn't increase that at all. If anything, after the thread changes, that was relieved a little bit because it would just facilitate more drainage. Did you sitz bath? No. And that was weird for me because I lived in the bath for months before I went to India, and sitz bathing is how I learned to kind of cope with, pressure and draining and whatever. But Bapat was not into the sitz baths while you're threading because that would dilute and remove medication from the threads, according to him. Now, I have heard other people say that they were permitted to sitz bath during the treatment, but I didn't. So when I would go to the bathroom, I'd go to the bathroom, which would, sometimes be accompanied by drainage, or, because when you have a tract and you're going to the bathroom, stuff's getting in there, whether the thread is there or not. So you would have to push and drain. And I would go to the shower, and the shower at the hotel I had a wand, and I would kind of rinse myself off with the wand, and then I would press and let it drain and press and make sure that I got as much of any fecal material that would get in there through bowel movements was out. And then I would just go back to bed and lay down and rest and do whatever. But no sitz bathing for Bapat. He's not into that. After, when you're home healing, that's a different story. You can bathe then. I mean, he encourages it because it's an important way to keep yourself clean. Afterwards, when you have that open wound now, because you don't leave India healed unless you stay there for another couple months after your treatment, which most people do not do. You come home and you have a wound that you need to pack and clean, and that was a very intense part. It gets a little more intense, in my opinion, after the threading's done, because then it's like all on you. then it's not about going to Bapat and having him do the threading and you just walking. You actually have to like get comfortable sticking your fingers in your ass and cleaning, and you know, and it's this like wound and you're like touching it for the first time, and it was a little crazy, but it's doable and you get over it. You just got to do it. Did you witness others getting healed? How about any failed procedures? There was a couple other patients that I met in the lobby of Dr. Bapat's office. We had quick conversations and they were in the middle of treatment. So I didn't stay with people at the hotel who were also undergoing treatment. So I didn't really have any ongoing interaction with other patients. I know some of the patients that go to see Dr. Bhatt, they all, like, a lot of them stayed together and healed together. I know about one woman who failed Bapat's treatment, and I'm not going to mention any names because it's not appropriate. However, I know, based on things that she was posting in the group, and conversations with Dr. Bapat and others in the group who know her, that she was not following his instructions. She was not listening. She was not eating the way she was supposed to. She was there in India to do more than heal. And unfortunately, it did not work for her. So it can fail. And but the only person I know, it seemed more that it was her not following rules than Bapat not doing what he was supposed to do. How did you manage that on the way home? The way home was very difficult because I had my flight booked, and it was the same day that I had my final checkup, and Bapat had to do that little mini removal of a superficial tract that was parallel with my other tract, which created a little excess bleeding than I normally should have had. Now, if I was doing it over again, I would have booked my flight probably a good 5 days at least after my final checkup, so that you know that whatever happens in that final checkup with Bapat, you have a little bit more time. The way home was like 15 hours or more in transit. I did not go to the bathroom. I intentionally fasted the entire day before leaving so that I wouldn't have to go to the bathroom, because you need to do some serious cleaning every time you go to the bathroom once you have that wound, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that on the airplane. So again, my advice would be to give yourself some time in India after your final appointment to make sure you have a really good handle on that process so that you can better navigate your way home. Because by the time I got back to New York, we had also had a 7-hour flight delay. We landed in the United Arab Emirates to refuel, and we had like a huge delay. It was very stressful, the ride home, I'm not gonna lie. I had to go to the bathroom so bad by the time I got back to New York. I thought I was gonna explode. But I made it, and I went to the bathroom. My mom picked me up, and we got back to my apartment, and I went to the bathroom, and that's when I did my first packing myself, because Bapat had packed the wound for me before I went home. So I had Bapat's dressings, and then I came home and did the first one when I got back to New York myself. And I was able to do it. It got easier and easier as the packing process went on. But it was strange at first, I can't lie. My advice is, if you are already, exploring this as an opportunity, get used to putting your fingers in your ass. I'm dead serious. You need to get over that, because you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to put your fingers in your body to do what you need to do. So get acquainted with yourself. You have to. We're covering some good stuff, guys. It's 7:45. I can keep going for at least another 15, 20 minutes. guys asked really good questions. Just with the diet, it's, I think a big part of the reasons why, some of these doctors turn away people with Crohn's is because we do have a higher risk of recurrence. We do. And if I didn't get my symptoms under control and stop with, a lot of the rampant raging of Crohn's that I had, I'd be really worried that, eventually you're going to have another problem. So the diet and this willingness to make lifestyle changes in addition to take this leap of faith to go to India is just as important. I would never expect once you cross this line that you're going to go back to just being able to do and eat however you want. It's not realistic if you want this to work. How long did the wound take to completely close? It's a good question. I'm not going to say completely close because that's not what it does. It doesn't completely close. You're left with a ridge. So let's see if I can draw this. So imagine, this is going to be so rudimentary, and this is probably not going to really translate well. But a normal person's butt is a circle, okay? Once you have this procedure, your butt is like that now. You have a little divot, and that used to be the canal. Now, that inside of that, when you first have it, is raw, like flesh, that you eventually it heals over and becomes skin. I would say that process really before it felt like, skin, and when I stopped packing, when I was able to stop packing it and cleaning it with iodine, was probably about 2.5 to 3 months. But I still use a bidet after every bowel movement. I don't take a bath after every bowel movement anymore, but I still use a bidet. And if I'm out and about at a restaurant, at a friend's house, I bring wipes with me, and I'll use a wipe. I'll use a wipe, no problem. And then when I go home later on that night, I use the bidet just to make sure that I was extra clean, because cleanliness is so important. Like Western bathroom etiquette is not clean. Using toilet paper to wipe your ass is not cleanly. If you spilled chocolate pudding on your counter, you're not going to take a napkin and smear it around on your counter. You're going to get a wet cloth or a sponge, and you're going to clean it with soap and water. Same thing applies to your body. And Bapat was totally on board with the bidet. He's the reason why I got one. He was the reason that he even told me that we all think, oh, well, we'll use wipes, He says wipes are not good either. You're using pressure. You're pushing fecal material into the open pores of your skin. You're leaving chemical residue on your butt. My dad had installed a bidet on my toilet for me while I was in India, so that when I got back to my apartment, it was there waiting for me. And I will never, ever use paper products to wipe ever again. And anybody who has a fistula should have a bidet. There's a lot of brands pushing them. There's tons of different price ranges. Tushy, Toto, I see a lot of them. I have a Toto, it's great. I would really, really recommend it. It's really, really important. Gotta be clean. Gotta be clean. And a lot of European countries use bidets. Like they already understand that that's a much more sanitary option. But here it's not accepted. And the doctors I had Crohn's since I was 7 years old, and I had fistula since I was 18. So none of them, not one of them, ever said, hey, maybe you should get a bidet. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. You don't need a separate fixture to get a bidet. Like that could be really expensive to have to get, um, you know, to have to buy a whole separate fixture and have a plumber come in and run an extra line. It doesn't work that way. You literally just take the toilet seat off, hook it up to the existing plumbing, and it works. So do that. It's really important. But also, if you're still suffering with abscess, you're going to have to keep bathing. You're going to have to keep up with the baths. Because that was the only reason I made it to India, was living in the bath for a couple months before I went. I mean, I was taking baths 2-3 times a day to keep it draining. It was a horrible, dark time in my life. It really, really sucked. Drink lots of water. The psychological aspects. It's a huge part of this whole thing. It's a tough illness for everybody, but I think it's really tough because it's embarrassing. It's a bathroom disease that not a lot of people want to talk about. So I think a lot of people end up suffering with this alone. Luckily, I didn't suffer with it alone. I have very supportive family who I was able to lean on and talk to, and in India there was a 12-hour time difference, so it was kind of strange because I was alone over there, but I would try, I always made sure that I had a conversation with them while they were getting up and I was going to bed, and vice versa, and they kept me sane over there. And I also happen to have friends who have this issue. I have one of my friends has Crohn's disease. One of my best friends has Crohn's disease. His case isn't nearly as complex as mine. He doesn't have fistulating Crohn's. He's well controlled on Humira. He doesn't really have to adjust his diet. He's had it for less time than I have, so his body is in better shape than mine. But he and I have been able to talk a lot. I have another friend that has celiac, so in terms of like dietary issues and stuff, and going to dinners and having to be the problem child that has to modify stuff. I mean, you just deal with it, and I think if you're having trouble with the psychological aspects of it, which is totally understandable, then go to talk to somebody, because it's difficult. It was a long period of darkness, of me just suffering and missing things and being alone in my apartment and being worried, scared. I never thought I was going to live for very long. I didn't see how my body could possibly hold up over time. I was like 18, I had a fistula, like I saw what they did to me, it didn't work, it came back, I'm on these drugs. These drugs are clearly what's holding me together with a Band-Aid. At the end of my term, I feel the infection getting worse. Like, how long could my body possibly hold up over time? It's just, there's no way, like, I'm going to live to be a 70, 80, 9-year-old man. Like, my gut is going to rot out of, before I'm even 40 or 50. And I do not feel that way now. And that psychologically obviously has had a drastic improvement on my outlook. But communication, being able to talk to people who are in a similar situation, and that's why I'm going to continue to do this at no charge for anybody who needs the help, because this is the charity that I was chosen to give in my life, and I'm happy to help. Any regrets? Yeah, not going sooner. I suffered way too long. I had a fistula for over 10 years. And I also regret listening to all the bullshit about being able to eat whatever I could eat. If I had taken care of my body and listened to sound nutritional advice, years prior, I probably could have saved myself a lot of damage to my gut. So my regrets are not going sooner and not taking the nutrition concepts into, because your microbiome and your gut, it takes a long time to heal. You're not gonna stop eating grain and dairy tomorrow, and all of a sudden your Crohn's is gonna go away. I still have symptoms now. And that's why I call it control. I don't believe in remission. Remission implies that it goes away. And you're either on drugs, which are causing you to go into remission, which I don't consider remission because you're on drugs that could wear off at any time and that have all other side effects. So I don't consider that remission. And I don't consider what I'm doing remission, where I'm, taking all of this precaution and all of this dietary and supplemental approach and lifestyle approach to management of my disease. That's not remission. If I stop doing any of that, or if I start treating myself like shit, it's going to come right back. I always have Crohn's disease. It doesn't go away. So, my regret is not making those realizations earlier and treating my body better. But it's also, you can't make these changes and do these drastic things. And I wouldn't even advise that you do these drastic things, like go to another country and cut out enormous groups of food from your life if you were so desperate enough that you had to do it. You kind of have to hit rock bottom to make changes. That's kind of the human experience, unfortunately. And I hit that, and I made the decisions that I made, and I have zero regrets. Which foods have you stopped eating? So, at the advice of my nutritionist, so just so you know, the live says that I have 1 minute and 51 remaining. It just started counting down. But I'm just going to end it and start it right back up when this happens. So just join right back in if I get caught off. But we still have 2 minutes on this clock here. Which foods have you stopped eating? I am grain-free, so I only eat rice. I am dairy-free. I am red meat-free, so I eat poultry and fish. I am corn-free. I am soy-free. I am lectin-free, which is why I pressure cook all my vegetables, which you see me talking about on my feed all the time. Low sugar, low fat. I'm also basically alcohol-free. However, the idea is that you do not have to be free of all this stuff forever. Most of these things you're going to be free of forever, but as your body heals, according to my nutritionist, you can begin to add certain things back. And I would advise that you eliminate them from your life with the idea that you're doing it indefinitely to allow your gut to heal. And also, you should probably get linked up with this guy yourself, and I'm happy to give the information so that he can tailor this to you. Because the general idea is eliminate foods that are known to have high allergenicity, which are all those things. And if you get into the health food game, you're going to understand that real quick, that those are the things that hurt people. So hold on, guys. There's 5 seconds remaining, so I'm going to end this, and then I'm going to start it up again. All right? So just give me a second.